Hello, FIRST teams, and welcome to the FIRST Fundraising Toolkit, Section 6 webinar, focused on the topic of creating a team booster club. My name is Renee Becker, and I am the FIRST Fundraising Toolkit coordinator. And joining me for this webinar are two representatives from FRC Team 2220. The FIRST Fundraising Toolkit was created using a grant from the Argosy Foundation, and the focus was to help provide teams with materials to fundraise in their local communities, allow them to develop local relationships, learn successful fundraising methods, and increase the sustainability of teams throughout FIRST. In this specific section, we are going to be talking about some 501c3 alternatives and more specifically creating a team booster club. We'll be going over how FRC 2220 created their booster club and the different steps that they took and what were some things that they learned through their process. So, Jim, can you tell us a little bit more about your background, and then Penny, go after that?
Sure. Again, I'm Jim Lynch. I'm the faculty advisor for FRC Team 2220. In reality, I'm the coach advisor for a much bigger program. We have we've sort of evolved ourselves into Egan First Robotics because we have 10 FTC teams underneath us, and we support a variety of FLL teams. So we're trying to form a sort of an umbrella organization. And then along with that, my job that I sometimes get to during the day is technology specialist at Egan High School.
And I'm Penny Anderson, and I was the founding president of the Egan High School First Robotics Booster Club. And last year we had our inaugural STEM career fair, and I coordinated that. And my day jobs are being a librarian and database specialist.
Wonderful. All right, let's jump right in. Why did FRC Team 2220 decide to actually create a team booster club? Jim, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the background?
Absolutely. We're entering our 8th year as an organization. We started out, like many teams do, very, very small, about a dozen students our first year, but we experienced a dramatic growth to the point now where this year we have 72 students on our FRC team and a total of 135 students if you include all of our FTC teams. And we're finding that, especially in those first few years as we doubled and tripled in size, that we needed, I needed help. There's no way I could have survived as an advisor. Even my technical mentors could have survived without building a bigger support organization around us. And that was really the motivation, is to try to build a sustainable organization with the support of parents. Really to handle things that are not building robot related. The parents do a variety of things, and I think we'll get into this later, but I don't really have to worry about carpools or snacks or, for the most part, team fundraisers, even things like we host a week 0 event, building field elements, or even building field elements for our team to strategize and practice with. And then, and just as important, at least in my book, is team cohesiveness, so managing things like team socials for adults and for kids. The other things that go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's wonderful. And so those are some of the areas that the parents help with, and then you encourage parent involvement by using the booster club too, right?
Yes, yeah. And then we more recently, I think last year, and then very much so this year, using our parents booster club as sort of an adjunct business team. We have a very, very small business team, and our parents are fulfilling roles and we're trying to incorporate students in this as well, but finding new funding sources, networking, helping us manage a good relationship with our sponsors by doing a variety of things, including making sure that we fulfill grant obligations, getting thank you letters out, networking with potential new sponsors, things like that.
Wonderful. And I feel like all of these areas, especially administrative tasks, parent involvement, and then these new funding sources, are all areas that some of the teams with less organization and less mentor support, they really struggle with. And so I feel like, watching the team grow and seeing you guys create this booster club and learning more about it, it's really done a lot in terms of helping, the team organize the information. So let's move on. Why didn't the team actually create a formal 501c3 organization?
Okay, when we were first getting started, the short answer to that is time and expense. I looked at how to form a 501c3. We would need to fill out Form 1023. The IRS estimates that for a novice to fill out that form, it takes a little over 100 hours to prepare. The form is 29 pages long and requires schedules and attachments, so it's usually 50 to 100 pages long by the time you're done. And after filing it, it takes 2 to 12 months for the IRS to approve the application, and the cost for the form to file the form is $850. Alternatively, we found the backdoor route for booster clubs, that by joining Parent Booster USA, we were granted immediate 501c3 status. The IRS has granted a group exemption to all members of Parent Booster USA. It takes just a few minutes to apply as opposed to the 100 hours. You get immediate 501c3 as opposed to waiting 2 to 12 months or more. And the cost is $195 for the first year and $95 annual renewal fee. So it's simpler, less expensive, and faster.
Awesome. In one of our other discussions, webinars on forming a 501c3, we talked about the 1023 form. And so being able to kind of compare those two is a pretty interesting comparison. All right, so let's talk about some of the benefits of creating this booster club and some of the things that happen because of its creation.
I think I can take on the first aspect of it, and probably one of the most important, and that is the whole goal of the booster club is to boost. It's to really provide the framework of support so that our technical mentors and even our non-technical mentors that work with students in media and business aspects can focus on working with kids on those areas and not have to deal with the business-related tasks, logistical, organizational tasks that oftentimes get in the way of technical mentors. I know it did for us the first couple of years, trying to manage all those other tasks on top of being technical mentors and getting a robot built.
Additionally, incorporating decreases personal liability and increases credibility. If you don't incorporate and something financially happens, the individuals are at risk. When you incorporate, let the organization take the risk. And when you're applying for a grant, you have more credibility as an incorporated body. And the 501c3 status opens the door to funding. There are many foundations, many companies who will only give to you if you are a 501c3. It's not necessarily good enough in some cases to be part of a school and be nonprofit. Many just give to a 501c3. So just that one thing can open many new doors to funding. We have gotten many thousands of dollars that would not have otherwise been available because of our non-exempt status, nonprofit status.
It'd be interesting to start tracking some of those numbers, that because of the 501c3, how much has the team been able to fundraise over the years. But so this is a good example of some of the benefits, but let's talk about some of the challenges that the team faced in terms of creating this booster club and organizing it.
Well, in a few minutes, we're going to talk about how we actually, all the forms that we go through to do it. But even after you do the various forms to create your booster club, there are various forms that need to be taken care of for your annual filings. That's a challenge, to make sure that somebody is responsible for doing the annual business renewal. Someone is responsible and knows when parent booster dues are due each year. Otherwise, you lose your 501c3 and you start over again if you don't know all the different pieces that you need to take care of. So just keeping a system for what your annual filings are can be a little bit of a challenge. Not that it's insurmountable. We do have calendars and such, not a big deal, but it is one. And then the other one is writing the bylaws. All the other pieces that you need to do to create a booster club, you can pretty much copy from other people. One article of incorporation is about like the next. Insert your name where their name is, insert your address where their address is. But the bylaws are, how is this club going to run? When are we meeting? Who can vote? What officers will we have? And that's personal to your team and your situation. And you don't always know right at the start exactly how you're going to do it. And that's why you can do amendments to bylaws, because you do need to change that over time.
Okay. One of the other pieces along with this, just from an advisor or coach's standpoint, somebody that actually runs the team, is establishing the role of the booster club versus the role of the team leadership. And I know this from having been in a high school for 20-some years, and the role of booster clubs has dramatically increased over the years because of decrease in funding. Booster clubs have had to pick up more and more of the funding, and of course that's true for FIRST robotics teams. So you have to be very, very clear when you're establishing a booster club in terms of the roles of the what does the booster club do, what does the team do. So then you don't have a booster club, and I've seen this in sports, sort of trying to take over the sport, to try to insert themselves in terms of decision making on the team, like who plays the game. And for us that would be, what is the robot going to look like, and how, getting into the nitty gritty of how you're going to spend your money. The boosters have to have a role in terms of budgeting, but then in terms of how the money is spent and in detail, that's a coaching thing. So you have to define those roles so everybody's clear on that, so there isn't anger, frustration, confusion on both sides as you proceed forward.
When you first wrote the bylaws, did you have them very general, or were they more specific? How did the team kind of write the first set of bylaws and then adapt as they realized what they needed?
Well, we are still on our first set of bylaws, and they are due for some amendments at this point. I erred on the side of being general because I didn't want to paint us into corners that we weren't ready to be painted into. But there are areas where we are ready now to be more clear on possibly the budgeting process, who will set forth the budget, who approves the budget, and what that process will be, for instance. There's other small things in there that we need to tweak out a little bit, but we kind of just started with a general set of rules.
All right, that sounds great. I know that when I created some of the bylaws for the alumni group Go First in Minnesota, we had very general bylaws, and then when the amendments came up, we were able to start, getting more specific as we realized that, we needed to make some additions. So, all right. So let's go over the process that the team used to start, this booster club.
Okay, I'm going to go over this pretty generally. There is a white paper that you can link to that will go into it in more detail. But the first step to form the organization is to obtain a federal EIN. One of the officers will need to provide his or her social security number to prove that it's a real United States citizen applying for this. It's the only time your social security number is used, but you need to put that in. You go to the website that you see there. When asked for an organization type, check View Other Types, select PTA or school organization, and when you get to the point that you need to put in a type, you put in Booster Club. It's free. It takes about 15 minutes, and you have an EIN at the end of that process. The next step is establishing 501c3. At this point, you can fill out that Form 1023 and take your 100 hours, or you can join Parent Booster USA, and in about 5 minutes, you've got your 501c3 status. At this point, you are now a 501c3 organization if you've done those 2 steps, and the rest of them are really optional activities. Incorporation's a great idea because it does lessen your liability. The incorporation is handled somewhat differently from state to state. You need to check to see what the forms are with your Secretary of State in your state. There is typically a original filing fee, but there is, at least in Minnesota, there is not an annual renewal fee. So our original fee was $70, a fairly quick, simple form to incorporate. And then moving on to the next slide, we also then drafted bylaws, and we kind of already covered that a little bit. Applying for state sales tax exemption is obviously not required, but nobody likes to spend their fundraising dollars on taxes that they don't have to, so file with your State Department of Revenue to not have to pay sales tax. And one that is often missed by a lot of people is they don't realize that most states require that nonprofits file a form to solicit funds, legally solicit funds in the state. It's the charitable solicitations form in the state of Minnesota, and there is an annual financial report that they want to see each other year, and organization, anyone in the state can look up then to see who has permission to solicit funds. They can see a broad overview of your fundraising to see what % of your funds are going to administrative. They see just a little bit about your organization financially there. And that is pretty much what the process is.
Wonderful. So we definitely have the white paper, which will be accessible on the First Fundraising Toolkit website, underneath the link to this the webinar discussion. So feel free to kind of bounce over there and check it out. Continuing along, let's talk about some tips that you have for teams who may want to create this booster club, and what were some of the things that you found that teams should be aware of.
One of the first things I'd point out is you want to make sure that you are fundraising legally. We all think, well, obviously I'm going to fundraise legally, but many people don't realize what's not legal for a nonprofit. You need to avoid individual fundraising accounts. It's not that they are always wrong, but most of the time they aren't legal for a nonprofit, so they're easier to avoid completely. There's a link there to some slides that go into it in more detail, but there are rules about asking for a fair share. So for a public charity, for a 501c3, you can't tell people you have to join the booster club. This is your fee to join the booster club. Requiring that's illegal. Games of chance, bingo, raffles, it varies state by state. It may or may not be illegal in your state. It may or may not have extra rules to apply to it, but just make sure that you are check out that set of slides and know what is legal.
Okay. The other thing that we try to do with our boosters is really make them open and accessible, and communicate to all of our parents that they are open and accessible meetings. It's a great way to draw in parents, include them. I think they find out right away that they're not going to be spectators in those meetings, that they're going to get drawn right into the discussions. There is a booster club board that does the decision making, but the opinions are very, very much valued in our meetings. Like I mentioned earlier, we really have really taken off in terms of our first Tech Challenge program, and we've gone through some growing pains and decision making on how do we get FRC and FTC to mesh, and where does that all fit in, and we've had a couple of FTC parents in our meetings, and we really drew upon them and their ideas and opinions, because the boosters originally started with FRC Team 2220. So I would really highly recommend making sure you have open meetings, have the boosters do some socials to try to connect with parents, to network with them and invite them in meetings. And then the other real key thing that we do, we certainly send out general email invites to help with a variety of things, but networking and doing personal invites is really important. As a matter of fact, I just sent one this morning for a program that we call barn raising, where we bring parents in to help build field elements, things like that. It actually turns out to be a lot of fun for them and a great way for them to get to know each other. But some people that I already know from other aspects of my life that I know are pretty handy, that are also parents, inviting them in and asking them to invite others in. So it's very important that you do that.
And then the other piece for a booster club is know how you're going to handle communications. The groups, if you're doing it right at least, is growing, and it's harder and harder to communicate with a large group. So we created an intranet to house our documents and to handle online signups. Our intranet is a free intranet on PBWorks, and it's a wiki that various people can edit. And we use Google Docs. You could use SkyDrive or some other cloud-based system, but we use Google Docs to create our sign-up sheets. We set them to anyone with the link can edit, so that to make it accessible, so that our parents don't have to log into Google. We don't have to personally share the document with each person. We just create the document and house the link on the intranet to handle our sign-up sheets.
There are other teams, obviously. Team 2220 would be more than happy to help folks that are interested in starting a booster club. The white paper is really extensive and walks people through the process, but you can certainly communicate with us or other more established teams in your area that have booster clubs to get things done. Just know that you're not alone. We certainly reached out and did some homework when we started ours, and that's kind of the way that first operates, thank goodness.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that 2220 did that I really appreciated this past year was at the Minnesota Regional. You kind of did this presentation, and you were able to, highlight this white paper that you worked on, and then you came on board to do this webinar with the Fundraising Toolkit. So I really appreciate that, and thank you so much for being on here. And then, teams, if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email at rbecker@usfirst.org. I'll be able to either route it to 2220. What we'll do is I'm going to plan on making these slides PDF, so you'll be able to click on the links, and we'll also, again, have that white paper up so you can see the process that 2220 walked through in order to create this Parent Booster Club USA Egan High School First Robotics Booster Club. All right, so Jim and Penny, thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.